What if I tell you that the real AI bottleneck is not your model, but the infrastructure it runs on? Welcome to an Eye on AI. I'm your host, Satyan Bhartia. In the major move, the OpenInfra Foundation has welcomed Cachengo, a rising AI hardware innovator, as its newest platinum member, a move that signals major shift in how open source infrastructure is evolving to meet AI's demanding requirements. Joining us today are Steve Westmoreland, Chief Information Officer at Cachengo, and Jimmy McArthur, Director of Business Development at the OpenInfra Foundation. And today we are going to unpack what this partnership means for the future of AI, open infrastructure, Cachengo's innovative approach to hardware optimization, and how this collaboration could reshape the landscape for developers and enterprises building AI solutions. So let's get started. Steve, Jimmy, it's great to have you both on the show.
Nice to be here.
Thanks for having us.
And Steve, I would love to know a bit about the company, about yourself, so that folks know what is Cachengo all about.
I've been in the business, I guess at this stage, probably about 35 years. I really entered the open source area around the VA Linux days. And I've been very lucky career-wise to bounce back and forth in organizations that had high compliance requirements and were going through some type of cultural shift. When I first entered this arena via Linux, of course, we were trying to get open source adopted. We were trying to get it into industries, financial services industries is a good example. We're having to do a lot of the original baseline. So we were doing a lot of foundational work. I was very lucky working with some of the early kernel developers. Linus was consulting, Mad Dog, Eric Raymond, some of the original open source advocates. And that's where we built out some of the things that were the precursors to what we use today. SourceForge, a lot of the open source licensing was being developed at that point in time. The Open Source Development Lab was working down at Oregon University. And those became, the Linux Foundation and moved forward. So I've just been very lucky. I did a stint at the Linux Foundation when we were doing, OpenStack was very active at that time, Cloud Foundry, the Cloud Native Compute Foundation, those things. So I've been very lucky to be involved in a long time, and I've used that. Cachengo, some of those foundational people in open source had come together several years ago now to develop initially it was a storage profile to put, the concept was to put compute power directly on the storage, be able to use it remotely, be able to use it decentralized. And they've moved forward. Everything in our company is open sourced already. But we've kind of really become a pioneer in decentralized, distributed processing, and that has lots of applicability in real time. We were doing real-time facial recognition, 7 years ago, at a remote location without having to go back to the cloud. So that's really what Cachengo is about. We're a pioneer in decentralizing that AI compute piece, storage, high density storage like video, those things that, physics gets involved because if you have to bring that back to the cloud to make every decision, physics becomes your enemy in that regard. So that's what I am. That's why I'm here to help promote those objectives.
Excellent. No, thank you so much for sharing your journey, which also gives a great perspective. And we'll talk about OpenInfra because officially OpenInfra is now part of Linux Foundation as well. It's kind of the umbrella, or in OpenInfra terms, the tent is getting bigger and bigger, which is a good thing as well. More collaboration there. I would also like to talk a bit about in today's world, one of the most, of course, when you talk about OpenStack, we are talking about the CERN and all the square array telescopes. The deployment are massive, insane. I don't even want to go there. But when you look at Cachengo, and one of the hottest workloads these days is AI. Can you also talk about what role is Cachengo playing in this AI space, or what AI means for Cachengo? And then we'll talk about why you folks decided to. I mean, you did talk about your history and relationship with the open source foundations, but what made you join Open Infra at Platinum, or escalate your membership to Platinum level? But let's start with some of the technologies these days, because no offenses, but Linux, OpenStack, they have become old and boring technologies.
Our priorities are basically driving the adoption of open. Like I said, all of our software that's been developed internally has already been open sourced. So the next step of the evolution is we increase our footprint. We've got adoption. Our products run, in they can run in a data center environment, obviously, but they also run on transit buses. They run in remote locations. They run in what I consider non-traditional data center footprints, such as building. Be able to have a building to actually be able to detect sensors and make a smart building without having to transit to the cloud every time you do something. So, our goal with the OpenInfra Foundation is, it's kind of in our DNA to do that, right? So you go to your friends first when you're doing something. You go to your friends, you go to your family. So we saw very much that if we want to continue to accelerate adoption of our product, of our open source footprint, of our hardware footprint, the smartest thing to do would be to go to friends and family, if you will, our colleagues, and use the good work that's already been developed. In some cases, this is not a situation where we think we've got a product that we want to push into the open source community and suddenly a community will. We plan on living in the existing community and help grow it. In some cases, that'll be ideas we put forward as part of the crucible of design and architecture that occurs. But a lot of it will also be using that technology to benchmark and extend our capabilities. In our perfect world, it would be totally seamless. You'd be able to create your AI model, distribute it out to the edge, decentralize it, right, where it doesn't have to come back to a centralized factorization, be able to distribute those inference models, make those decisions in real time, and then you get tremendous advantage through that. You're able to do it quicker, faster, better. You reduce your cost, over time, because you're no longer transiting back or having to tie down more costly resources. So we feel we've kind of done our best so far, but it's time to expand that ecosystem and work with the broader community, not only to share our knowledge, but to gain from the knowledge that's been built around the other ecosystems that, you can't be all things to all people all the time. So there's strength in collaboration.
Since OpenStack days, you folks, you reached the peak, you got good adoption there. And once again, like every technology, like kernel or Kubernetes, things, they stabilize, they mature. Talk a bit about where is OpenInfra now, especially by joining Linux Foundation, and what does this arrival of Cachengo as a platinum member means for the foundation, for the ecosystem?
First of all, Steve said it best that collaboration is strength in open source. And, the OpenInfra Foundation, as you mentioned, just recently joined forces with the LF. I see it as a massive advantage. We've already seen through our OpenInfra blueprint that we published last year that Linux, Kubernetes, and OpenStack are already working together, alongside things like Ceph. That's already happening in production. So being able to work more closely with the Linux Foundation is, I think, great for all of our communities. I think it shows that, right now in particular, open source, the power of open source is necessary to open up new markets. And it's necessary for, things like digital sovereignty. but also for helping promote keeping work in country for a lot of developing nations. So lots to be done there, and I'm very excited to be working with the LF. With Cachengo, it's they're the third platinum member we brought on in the last year, and I think it shows a dramatic amount of growth with OpenInfra Foundation, and particularly with OpenStack. And it shows the strength and the flexibility of the software that Cachengo will be relying on OpenStack to power their architecture in new and exciting ways. And I think you mentioned the Gartner hype curve, which we've certainly gone through in OpenStack, and we certainly hit the trough of disillusionment a few years ago. But I think we're on the way back up, and I think just showing again the flexibility of OpenStack to power solutions at the edge, like novel things that 3, 4 years ago we talked about theoretically, but here Kashengo is actually doing it in practice, and they're using our software to do it, and we love it.
Are you joining the foundation, or you're just upgrading your membership?
We're still a smaller company, I guess would be the right way to say it. So we're not a behemoth. We're growing very fast, but this is actually, we joined OpenInfra, I guess kind of from scratch, if you will. And then it was an added bonus that OpenInfra was moving over to the Linux Foundation. So it was kind of, hey, that's great, and that's even greater for us. Obviously, joining a platinum member, we're not funded in hundreds of billions of dollars. So, it's a situation where we put our money where our mouth is, as far as open, supporting the projects and the commitment that they've already made to the cloud native and the compute industry. I'll be honest with you, I was deeply involved in some of these things 10 years ago. And when we were having internal discussions at Cachengo, I was very excited to find out that OpenStack and OpenInfra were increasing as opposed to decreasing, because my belief, this is why I should never be a pundit. I had thought, well, originally Open Cloud Foundry was going to suck all the oxygen out of the room for OpenStack and what OpenInfra was to become. And then, since I was there when we created the Kubernetes Foundation, and the tremendous upsurge in containerization and Kubernetes workloads and all the, Jimmy referred to the hype cycle that accompanied that, that was just further evidence that maybe these projects will live their life cycle. And of course, the awesome part of things were, hey, guess what? The underpinnings of a lot of the Kubernetes work is OpenStack, OpenInfra components. And that's awesome, because to your point about the kernel, we take the kernel for granted today. And we won't talk about the days back when, we had to make kernel updates or beg for kernel updates every time we had a new device driver out, the bad old days. It's become a very stable entity. And to see OpenStack and the work that the OpenInfra Foundation has done to become that stable underpinning to where, it supports Istio, it supports other products that core technology stacks have been built on, just made it an easier decision for us, because our goal is to live, peacefully coexist, and use those foundational blocks as we talk to other things, but also that they can reciprocate, and they can, we can slide in seamlessly into that ecosystem. And so that was quite frankly, kind of a surprising but welcome addition, that it was as viable today as it's ever been. And to Jimmy's point, people are, they can tell you one thing, but when they write a check, that's usually a better side of a commitment. So,
what kind of signal this platinum membership of Cachengo for OpenInfra send? Because the fact is that we can talk about workloads as much as we want, but infrastructure is, the underpinning, that's the foundation. And luckily, even when I talk to Kelsey Hightower or everybody else, and Linux is on the, Linux is the foundation, and then on top of that you can put Kubernetes and everything else, but this is not as easy as the LAMP stack that it used to be in our days, where we can just, fire up a server, put the LAMP stack and go. It's very complicated. So talk a bit about, in this market, in this economy, in this where open source is also there, and then we are seeing a lot of disturbing trend, what does this membership mean for the whole community?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I mentioned earlier, I think it shows the health of the open infra community. I think it shows the health of open infrastructure software. The fact that we're we're backed by the Linux Foundation, I think shows that, the largest software foundation in the world puts some weight behind the work we're doing and sees, the the market value of an organization like Cachengo coming on board, along with Rackspace and Orchestro earlier this year. We're seeing growth in every region of the world, including the U.S. And I think Kachengo again sends that signal that hey, this isn't just a Europe digital sovereignty play. The open source software world is growing right here in the U.S. and hardware companies are using it to power their architecture. I think it's I hope it sends a strong message to the market.
Perfect, thank you. And Steve, you folks have been involved with open source for a very long time, as you mentioned. But as you joined OpenInfra and, of course, Proxy Linux Foundation as well, what is going to be your priority of engagement with these communities? Because Linux Foundation is an foundation of foundation. They are not community; they are communities. So, talk about what is going to be your priority. And as you rightly said, and we should not talk about 5 years from now. Let's just focus on 6 months.
Yes, I often I chuckle when people ask me for a 5-year plan, because I don't know if I've developed a 5-year plan in the last 25 years that survived engagement with the market. The short term objectives are that we are actually, this is something that's active with us. We had conversations as recently as last evening about what needs to happen to our particular technology stack to bridge it and make it fully OpenStack compatible. That's going to fall initially in the realms of Nova, Swift, Ironic, the Neutron projects. Those are kind of the low-hanging fruit that we have to look at and assess and modify accordingly would be the right way to say it. So that, like I said, that's an active. We have team members assigned those things currently. Longer term, those initial pieces address scaling. Obviously we have extremely high density nodes. Our smallest component is smaller than a phone, and the density. We're talking about thousands of servers in a rack of those nodes in a rack. So scaling, ease of deployment, ecosystem support are all things that come with the OpenStack, OpenInfra components, because they're already doing that, in the ecosystem now. Longer term, we'll continue to look at Keystone, Horizon, Cinder, kind of usual suspects, and then one of our internal projects that we're actively will be right now. There's a presentation request at the OpenInfra Foundation thing in Europe. Event, I guess, not thing. It's an event. Yes, thank you, summit. I lost a word there somewhere. Where we're expanding and providing a community some of our resources, some code we've written that allows geographically disperse storage components to make decentralized and distributed. We do decentralized, or pardon me, we do distributed now with a lot of the existing components. Decentralizing that's a little tougher because having a centralized control for some of the storage elements that are extremely high speed and AI enabled is more difficult. We've done some things. We're looking forward to it, presenting that to the community in the paper and getting feedback on, hey, are we addressing the right use case? What's the feedback? Because communities allow that crucible discussion of, is that the right way to do it? Would it have been better to do it the other way? We work those things out. I remember the fun days of the kernel forums, and I've never had to break up discussions in the parking lot of some events. So we're committed and all in. We're looking forward to it.
If I could follow up on that, you had kind of asked what kind of message does Cachengo joining as a platinum member send? I think here, Steve kind of frames it perfectly. This is exactly the kind of platinum member we want at the OpenInfra Foundation because they're engaging with the community. They're coming in eyes open. They understand that you have to put in some work to get known in the open source community. But they also want to give back to the open source community and not just use the software. So this is, in my opinion, a perfect marriage, if you will.
Oh, very well said. Very well said. Now, Jimmy, every time I talk to either Mark or Jonathan, they are just desperate to talk about AI. They're like, just talk about AI to us, And since I'm talking to Cachengo, I also want to we love to consume AI. But if you look at what Cachengo is, what are some of because running the model and workload, I can do that on my laptops as long as I have a good GPU. But what are some of the real bottlenecks for AI that I now want to talk about, the larger market that Cachengo is addressing and how joining OpenInfra will further help the whole ecosystem?
So probably the best way to answer that is to talk about one of our use cases. We've done work with New Jersey Transit with part of their innovation center, to where they have buses, they have things that move around that don't have a cable attached, and typically wireless is going to be a lower speed connection than a piece of dark fiber. So there's a Cachengo box in those transit pieces, and they're processing video and sensor feeds. So in a perfect world, if I'm trying to detect something, I want to have the highest video profile I can get. Unfortunately, video is high density information. So sending that up a wire, if you had a wire, is difficult. So our AI components, our inference engine running on a piece of Cachengo hardware and a piece of Cachengo software at the moment, is looking at those videos, and they have a AI model, an inference model that detects weapons and detects, events like somebody falls down or something like that. So and those models can be updated. If we are looking for a particular person, we could do facial recognition on that. We have various inference engines can be loaded down to that distributed decentralized module. So we've decoupled that from having to have a dark cable attached to every bus. It doesn't have to go through wire. It can be, you can dump that video. Once you come back to the warehouse, you can save that off of because it's Cachengo equipment has high density storage as well as the compute engine part of it. So that type of AI example, is now being expanded to where it can process the audio files also. Turns out that when bearings start to go bad when the tires go round and round, they make a particular sound, and that can be analyzed with it. So the capability, we focus a lot on building the models and, ChatGPT and all those super cool things. But the other side of AI, building the models that can drive the inference components, such as that, have real world applicability. I talked to an organization this week that has big solar farms, big solar farms, and they have a requirement to have, they're paying a lot of money to have, you don't want your solar farm in the middle of your subdivision. At least I don't want a solar farm in the middle of a subdivision. So they're by nature, very remote, and you care about what they're doing. You want to store what they're doing, but you don't necessarily want to keep it and store it in a cloud. You want to process it, near real time. So they're very interested in following up on that. So those are the type of AI cases that we're working on, actively. Actually right now with all of our clients have some variation of that theme. We're adding the capability to our sets to process. We're in a partnership with Intel to have access to the Gaudi processors to be able to do the modeling portion as well in near real time, to where there's less of a, I don't have to go buy time on the most expensive GPU processor in the known universe. I can buy the moderately priced GPU processor in the known universe and build my models and distribute my inference models at the same time. So there's a lot of exciting things. I mean, none of us goes by a day without hearing something about AI. So, we're trying to stay in the practical world of what can I do with it? What kind of business problems can it solve?
Actually, until I met Cachengo, I didn't realize that you could use AI for anything except for fake political cartoons. So it was very exciting. Uh, but to Steve's point, I think like this, it really shows what we've been saying for a long time at OpenInfra, that OpenStack is the de facto software for running AI workloads. We've seen it in lots of other areas, but I think this is a new and exciting area. These inference models, as far as I know, other organizations aren't using OpenStack in that way. So I think it helps further that story for us, and hopefully it helps shine a spotlight on the cool work that they're doing at Cachengo.
Steve, Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us today and share these insights into what could be a game-changing partnership for the AI infrastructure space. It's clear that Cachengo's joining OpenInfra as a platinum member represents more than just a business relationship. It's a signal that open source infrastructure is evolving to meet the massive demands of AI workloads.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you again, Swap. Good to see you.